York and Crew Nation, and welcome to today's 4-chapter event. This event, Alex? Anyway, this event is a collaboration among Crew Dallas, Crew Iowa, Crew New York, and Crew Orlando, featuring market and thought leaders from each of those chapters. It truly demonstrates the power of Crew Network. This event is being recorded, as you've noticed, and a link will be distributed to all registrants within the next week or so. We are delighted you have joined us for today's roundtable discussion, content-rich and focused on providing you with market insights in 4 specific regions and sectors, and the overall commercial real estate market as well. And some takeaways, we hope, such as where are the opportunities these days. But first, let's quickly recognize our respective chapter sponsors. Their loyalty and generosity empower us to serve you. Crew Dallas, Crew Iowa, Crew New York, and Crew Orlando. You see, we have a lot of businesses across the country supporting us, and we are fortunate in that through Crew Network and our local chapters. So terrific. Thanks, sponsors, if you're on. Before getting down to business, if you have a question for the speakers, I suggest you put it in chat as we go, and we will do our best to respond during the Q&A segment following the discussion. Also, it is exciting to see Crew colleagues from around the network, but I do encourage you to use private chat for any connecting and use the main chat room for questions for the panel. It's a little less distracting all around. And now for the main event, our panelists today from left to right on your screen are Sue M. Ansel, CEO, President, Gables Residential, Crew Dallas. Jackie Johansson, Principal, Shattered Glass Development and Shattered Glass Equity, Crew Iowa. Carolyn Pianin, Senior Vice President, Arcturus Group, Crew New York. And Jacqueline Buzzuto, Shareholder, Section Leader, and Co-Chair of Hospitality and Leisure at Lowndes Law, Crew Orlando. To avoid some confusion, since there are 2 Jacquelines or Jackies, I'll refer to Jackie Johansson as Jackie Jo, and Jackie Buzzuto as Jackie B, or just Jackie. Carolyn Pianin will be Carrie, and Sue will be Sue. The discussion will continue for about 45 minutes to allow time at the end for questions for you, as I mentioned. For the first part of the conversation, each of our speakers will be primarily focused on their respective region and particular industry sector that they have adopted for today's meeting in some cases. Then we will all turn to the broader commercial real estate market. What is currently affecting it? What is driving it? What are some challenges and what are some solutions that are out there? This is obviously too ambitious for this one-hour program, but we will do our best, and you certainly have the people to do it here. As you know, all geographic regions and most, if not all, commercial real estate sectors are interconnected, each impacting the other, and all impacting and impacted by the economy, politics, and the capital markets. That is why we need Crew Network in order to thrive in our business. Finally, although our focus today is forward-looking, regional and sector differences in COVID response, perceived societal conditions, and resulting business activities have undeniably shaped today's commercial real estate environment and its challenges and progress. So, esteemed panelists, I'd like each of you to tell us briefly, specifically what you do in commercial real estate and what is keeping you so busy doing it these days, because I know you're all very busy. So Jackie Jo, Iowa, retail, what's keeping you busy? What do you do?
Thank you, Barb. I'm very excited to be here. Simply put, I'm a business owner. So I lead Shattered Glass Development, which is a brokerage firm in Iowa and across the Midwest. And the mission of Shattered Glass Development is basically to create a win-win environment for the land and the building and the business owners that we work with. And we also work with cities. We work with a lot of cities that have a vision that integrates commercial real estate. So along with that mission, we're also focused on increasing the number of women and minorities involved in commercial real estate, and specifically in the Midwest. So we like to focus on that as well. And then I also own Shattered Glass Equity, which is basically a platform that brings land and real estate developers a connection to accredited investors. And it gives accredited investors a lens and an opportunity to look at development projects that are looking for equity and for a place to put their investment dollars. So I don't know about those of you in the audience. I'll be honest, personally, I was in the business for 20 years before I had my first investment in commercial real estate. So we also like to strive to have more women, more minorities, more professionals, especially those that work in commercial real estate, to actually be investing in the projects that we work on or that other crew members are working on. So that's something.
Thank you, Jackie Jo. And of course, the conversation about women investing in real estate is a whole other conversation that we really should be having more often. And I will get back to you on some of your thoughts about the sectors that are good for investment. So Sue is focused on multifamily today. No surprise, given her business. And tell us what exactly you do in commercial real estate and what is keeping you so busy these days.
Happy to. Thanks for the invitation to be here. Happy to be on this with this esteemed panel of experts. Yes. So good afternoon and good morning, as the case may be, to the group. So I'm the CEO of Gables Residential, which is a 39-year-old vertically integrated multifamily and a little bit of mixed use organization. So we develop, we build, we own, we manage, we acquire, we dispose of real estate really around the United States. We invest in 9 markets, and then we also manage for other institutional owners in an additional 6 or 7 markets. So total units under management is about 30,000 units. And we have approximately 250,000 square feet of commercial space as well. I'm here representing Dallas, so we'll talk about the whole country, but we'll focus a little bit on Texas as we go through the information today. And what is keeping us so busy? In 2020, it was all about how we respond to COVID and how the world changed regularly with different regions and different locations and different regulations, and couldn't be more proud of our team in attacking the challenges, keeping our residents safe, and taking care of each other and associates, most important. What has really changed since the beginning of the year is the amount of activity, traffic, and leasing activity is opened up as vaccinations have become available and been inoculated across the country. We've seen a huge increase in traffic and activity. And so frankly, we are still working through the lingering COVID restrictions as they burn off. And we might talk about moratoriums as the one that's still in place, scheduled to burn off shortly. But other than that, we are back in business stronger than ever.
That's excellent news, Sue. Excellent news. And I believe you mentioned before that your portfolio is Class A?
It's primarily Class A.
Primarily Class A. Okay, terrific. So Jackie B, in Orlando, in Florida, what else but hospitality?
Hello, everybody, and thanks. It is an honor to be on a panel with these wonderful ladies and to talk to you today about hospitality in Orlando. I am an attorney. I've been practicing law for 35 years. I grew up with a love and a passion for food and wine and was lucky enough to work my legal career into those areas. And so what I do here is co-chair our hospitality and leisure division, and my practice for most of my career has involved working in those areas in commercial real estate, both purchasing and leasing, financing, asset sales and purchases. And so what is keeping me busy these days is trying to assist our clients through just a horrible year when they were basically shut down, but also with PPP loans and for the restaurant industry, the Restaurant Recovery Fund. And now we are seeing coming out of that, what we're seeing is people starting to have transactions, mostly in the smaller companies, but we're also seeing a lot of restaurant and hotel actually doing a lot of renovations during COVID. And so that's what's keeping us busy. And of course, while I'm sitting here, my lights have gone off. So if you see me flailing in a moment like a chicken, it's not a bug. I'm trying to get my sensors to turn my lights back on. So as you go to Carrie, I'm going to flail a little here. So.
Thank you, Jackie. We are going to talk about the impact of digital innovation in our sectors in a little bit, but
and how fabulous it works. There we go.
There you go. So Carrie, New York office, tell us, and again, we were very intentional in inviting these particular speakers because they do have expertise in the sectors that they're talking about. And of course, some work exclusively in that sector, but they are all extremely knowledgeable about a wide variety of commercial real estate markets and everything impacting them. So they were the right people for the bigger discussion at the end. And so Carrie has adopted office for this part of the conversation. Carrie, what do you do in commercial real estate, and what is keeping you so busy these days doing it?
So thank you, Barbara. I really appreciate joining my esteemed colleagues from across the country. This is a fabulous panel, and I'm really honored to be here. My name is Carolyn Pianin, and as Barbara pointed out, I go by Carrie. I am a senior vice president at Arcturus Group. We are a New York-based advisory shop focused solely on commercial real estate. We deal with tenants, owners, and lenders across most property types, the major food groups, as well as across the capital stack, which really gives our firm a unique perspective when dealing with clients and their assets, because we understand the perspectives of all of the angles of the players in real estate. Today, I'm representing CREWNY New York and talking about office. So I'll talk specifically about my office portfolio and what's keeping me busy today. One of my clients has a major portfolio within New York City, a lot of Class B and B- office buildings. And while we're seeing green shoots, so I have to just share this one little story. It's just yesterday, I was on a call. We had our first letter of intent for this one particular office building that lost most of its tenants because most of it was comprised of most small businesses in the fashion and textile industries that were just decimated. Right? They shared with us their balance sheets, and after 10, 20 years of being in this building, they left, and we have a building, that's only 70% occupied. So first letter of intent, 20% rent reduction, more free rent than we've ever given. But you know what? It was a lease, and we were very excited. And while we were having this conversation, up came an email from one of the existing tenants asking for yet more rent relief. And they, while there are green shoots, it hasn't come back yet. So people are still struggling. But, as you talk to people in the industry, there is activity. People are buying, people are coming back. New York City is opening, right? The country is opening. People are getting vaccinated, but we're not there yet. And that's what's keeping me up at night and keeping me busy during the day.
Keeping you busy. Until it all rolls into one long day. I was going to put this up till later, but that was a nice segue. Carrie, I'm going to ask you the next question. As a number of my CREWNY New York colleagues on and others are probably aware, the New York commercial real estate industry is reportedly reeling in the face of new legislation, extended eviction moratoriums, environmental regulation, and higher taxes. Do you agree with that that reported feeling, Carrie? What is the likely impact and duration of these conditions, particularly in office?
Well, I don't want to get into a political conversation, right?
No politics.
So I'm gonna step aside. Look, you know what? If taxes go up, what we have seen is a migration, right? We've seen it. It was happening before the pandemic. There is a sense that that's happening. Yet again, right? Like New York is it's a huge market. We have 400 million square feet of office. We have a population of close to 10 million people. they can't all leave, right? We have 99 billionaires that live in New York City, second to only Beijing. And when you look at the statistics, I think there were only 2 cities that made the list of top billionaires. It was New York City and San Francisco. New York City, when it opens, people will come back, right? You see reported multifamily that's getting leased up, right? We've gone from 17% occupancy, and people are now projecting it's going to be upwards of 60%. Office is going to be, the traffic counts are going to go up. We have to see, but I'm a big optimist, and I'm a proponent of New York City. I think when people come back to the office, when the restaurants open, when Broadway opens, when people start to travel, I mean, we're going to have to have international travel as well. So, right, we're still less than 50% vaccinated in this country, and around the world, it's still devastating. It will come back. It will just take time.
Well, I was going to say, Carrie, you said when this stuff all happens. So that's the big question for this market.
That's the big question.
Yes. Jackie Jo, I'm not sure what's going on out in Iowa in terms of people being back to the office, but I assume that's one of the things that is affecting retailers. And so curious how the retail and the flex space, markets are surviving, and what ingenuity you've seen from business owners to adapt. Iowa has been further in the reopening than New York for quite a while now. What are you seeing in that adaptive reuse and in the retail flex space markets?
Yes, thank you for that question. I'm excited to talk about that. So there's a lot of ingenuity and creativity, and those are the groups that are really doing well. So as far as the downtown office market goes, you're right. A lot of our larger companies, we have many financial and insurance companies that are in our downtown. We're known for it as a city, and they are mostly working from home or have some kind of hybrid scenario. So the retailers and the restaurants downtown are, they're struggling from that. Now, I'd say on top of that, there's been some creativity, and in the suburbs, they're not having quite that same level of impact from their office users because they're spread out a little bit more. They're in nodes, if you will, in our different submarkets. So some of the things that we've seen is, one of the things is those retailers or restaurants that can relocate have relocated to flex properties because, one, they're available. We've had a nice swing of new flex development. So that is available. It's lower in lease rate. And other ways, digitally, these companies had a chance to really get into some new technologies to make touchless opportunities, to make all kinds of new delivery options and website technology that they never really had to dabble in before. So there's been a lot of creativity again, and as well as one of the restaurateurs in town, even for every meal that was purchased, they donated one. So they're working with the nonprofits to try and make a win-win situation and try and keep a flow of traffic coming into their multiple restaurants that they own. And if I could just quickly add one more, this was interesting. I've also seen new product lines. So I was out in Western Iowa, over close to Omaha, and I went into a sandwich shop. And this is when a lot of the restaurants weren't open at all. And this sandwich maker had what used to be, just a table that customers would sit at, and he was rolling out dough. And I said, "What are you doing there?" And he said, "Well, I don't have a steady flow of customers right now, so I'm making a pizza product. I'm making up a whole new pizza line." So again, new product lines, new creativity, and lots of new technology.
Yeah, innovation, to Carrie's point about New York as well, that is one thing I think we can rely on throughout the country is in times like this, there will be those innovators, there will be those disruptors, and, it will get things moving. I'm just curious quickly though, Sue, are you seeing in the downtown area any kind of starting to see a pushback from office workers about going back to the workplace?
So in Texas and and Jackie B probably has a similar story in Florida. We have been more fully open than other parts of the country for a longer period of time. So we have had office workers really back in our markets for some time, and it continues to grow. Around the country, we are seeing more and more of that happen. So I agree completely with Carrie, which is do not give up on the urban cores. Don't give up on San Francisco. Don't give up on New York City. Frankly, it's probably a good opportunity to buy right now.
Oh, I
Although
completely agree
we
with
might talk about cap rates and what's happening there. But the level of traffic and is impacting multifamily. Interestingly enough, I'll go a little bit back to COVID. When COVID started in our portfolio around the country, we had a 9-week period where we had approximately 40% of what would be typical traffic, followed by a 5-week period. That first 9-week period was the stay home, stay safe, lockdown. Then as markets began to open up, particularly in Florida and Texas, where we have a large portfolio, we had a 5-week period where we had 150% of what would be typical traffic. That sort of got us back to where we might normally be from an occupancy standpoint. But what we saw was really from September to December, which is typically a period of time where things are slowing down. We had a steady tick up. And frankly, from January through where we are today, we are more full than we typically be, driven by a steady increase in traffic. So it varies by market, but in the Texas markets in particular, it has been very strong since the beginning of the year. Frankly, in all markets, it's been very strong, but two of our strongest markets since the beginning of the year are in Texas. So
are you seeing, go ahead.
Sorry, I agree with
Jackie.
Sue. I was going to say, I agree with Sue. In our market, we saw a lot of places never fully closed. They may have gone to, dividing into groups and teams and having teams on and off during that, 1 week on and 1 week off. And I know a number of hoteliers that never closed. So we, our market is more like what Sue's experiencing in Texas.
That's interesting. Well, maybe not so interesting given the responses to COVID. Sue, just one other question before I want to bring up another topic. This is not exactly related, but are you seeing in the Dallas and the Texas area, or in that even region, are you seeing a growing single family rental business at this point? And how do you think it's going to impact the multifamily, if at all?
Sure. Look, at single family rentals is a growing business around the country. We are seeing purpose-built single family rentals, particularly in the southern southwest part of the United States. I think to have a healthy residential housing business, we need to have all options. And I think that's a strong single family sales business. I think a strong single family rental business is important, strong multifamily sales and strong multifamily rental. There's a lot of, single family rentals is a new buzzword, and it's attracting a tremendous amount of capital. But frankly, I see it as very complementary to the whole residential sector. And I think it will be interesting as it continues to grow. We did see during the pandemic, especially in some of the urban core, we saw people move out of a more dense location and try to get some additional space, additional backyards, etc. I think that the renter is very specific. I think less than 60% of the renters that are going into single family rentals are coming from another single family home, whether that be a single family that they owned or a single family rental. So it's really not pulling from the multifamily pool. But I think we are 3.8 million as probably a low estimate, residential units short of what we need around the country. So more is good for the health of the country.
And do you just curious if you think that so moving from already living in a single family house to a new is the reason that they're not buying choice or financial, or they don't want the headache of owning, but they like they want to live on their own?
My guess is it's a combination, Barbara. I think unlike the global financial crisis, where it was primarily driven by ability to own a home and the financial impact. I think there's certainly some people that's driving it, but I don't think I think it's a lifestyle choice for many.
Interesting. I wanted to now, Jackie B, just another question on hotels specifically. So, we've all seen as technology has emerged and accelerated much faster than it probably would have without COVID in terms of implementing it into certain product and business types. So we've all seen, some of us were in St. Louis recently for the CREW Summit, where we are on contactless technology and a digitalized guest experience. And I'm just wondering, do you think, to what degree do you think this is going to last? Are we ever going to go back to the full service hotel where you get room service and you get concierge service and all of that? How do you think the impact of COVID and the acceleration of digital technology in the hotel business is going to play out for the industry?
So, Barbara, I think you're going to see that a lot of that is going to stay. I think full service is going to depend on different segments. And I think actually different demographics want different things. For those of us who are used to that full service, as COVID gets behind us and the memory of the stress of living with that begins to fade, I think that you are going to see people want, at least a segment of the consumer, want that full service. I think for the younger people, you're looking at people wanting more, they're looking at their stays as a place to sleep and they're wanting more experiential. So we're seeing big movements into ecotourism, sports tourism, where people are coming and they want to be outside more. And I think you will see a segment of the consumer and the industry stick with, keyless entry, keyless check-in, keyless, people-less checkout, and I think that the thing that's going to come back the slowest is sort of the full service food service at the hotels. I think they've done a good job of figuring out how to make that as safe as possible. But I think people are going to want that again as well. So I think it depends on the demographic. And just to give you a little background, in Central Florida, we have 127,000 hotel rooms, 15,000 vacation rentals,
Wow.
and 30,000 timeshares. And so you have a massive inventory here, and we're already, you've got this pent up demand for people to get out to places that they feel are safe, and we're already seeing occupancies on the weekends in the high 90s and during the week around 50% here. And you're seeing a big shift to people going to vacation rentals.
So, Jackie B, you mentioned that there was a little bit of a delay in the food service element, or there was a lag in the food service element getting back up to full speed. Do you think that's a health issue, or do you think that's a staffing issue, or both?
I think it's a combination of both. As everyone is experiencing across the country, there is a massive shortage of workers in every industry. And I think that people are having to decide. You're even seeing fast food restaurants decide whether to open the drive-through or the dining room because they just don't have enough people for shifts. I've seen people who make, reservations. All of my friends that are GMs at a lot of the big hotels, literally each of them have hundreds of openings for jobs. So I think that it's partially a safety issue, but also partially there's just not enough people to staff in every aspect of the hotels.
Right. Jackie Jo, to that point, there are not only, really significant labor shortages around the country, but there are also large increases in costs and dwindling supplies of essential commodities, labor, lumber, fuel, perishable food, things like that. What is that doing to your retail sector and your region? Do you see this as a short-term issue, and maybe once some of the benefits, unemployment benefits are done, people will get back to work? What do you see as causing it now, and what do you see as the solution in the timeline?
So I would say that, the labor shortage, as we're talking about, is just at the crux of the continued struggle for retailers and restaurateurs. So on top of that, getting shipments and getting supplies and inventory timely, there's been an uncovered issue of extreme difficulty in inventory management. So a lot of these retailers have had to invest somewhat significantly. Some of them were still using, Excel spreadsheets to manage their inventory. So there's been quite a bit of investment on the IT side of the business. With all of those lining up, you're starting to see there's about a 12.5% reduction in the offering of free shipping. So these business owners are trying to find a way to still compete with the Amazons and the others using the same supply chain and the distribution and logistics chain. Excuse me. So they're getting, if you call that creative, to no longer offer free shipping. But a lot of what that's doing, as well as the labor shortage, and it's crippling to small business owners, is it's increasing wages and it's increasing the price to the customer. And post-pandemic is not a good time to start increasing prices.
Well, by eliminating the free shipping, do you see that as a win for in-person physical retailers at all, or not enough?
I think the in-person retailers, that they're always going to be a group of shoppers that they want to physically go out to the mall. It's part of the experience, or to the retailer or to the restaurant. Creating an experience is so much more what shopping is about right now in person, because you don't get that experience when you're online shopping. But you're also going to always have those online shoppers that just in the moment, they see somebody walk by and they say, oh, I love that purse. And then they're going to order it instantly right there from their smartphone. Mm-hmm. So, this hybrid of the type of shopper, I don't see that going away. But I would definitely say that more expert and that more of an experience in retail is really what's going to make retailers shine.
That's how they're distinguishing themselves, the
That's
experiential side. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you. Carrie, you're in New York, the capital markets. Let's talk for a minute about downward pressure on the cap rates in the industrial sector and the multifamily sector. And, what are the challenges and unknowns with office fundamentals? You see changes in investment behavior. How do you advise your high net worth clients on this?
Well, look, our high net worth clients, a lot of people are still in that wait and see mode. It's very difficult to buy New York office and industrial because cap rates are so low and investors are so competitive. So people are out there and they're trying and deals are getting done. I think on the office side, people are still waiting to see what's going to happen post September. As Sue pointed out, it's probably a great time if you can figure it out, but with lower rents and with lower revenues, higher expenses. If we enter into an inflationary period, you're going to have a lower net operating income and increase in cap rates. It's going to just yield lower value. So I think we're going to see some type of pricing adjustment. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did, but I don't. But I think we're going to see that, especially on the office side. The one maybe good news is that inflationary periods and increases in cost to construct is probably a good thing when you are an owner, because it increases the replacement cost. So you wind up with a competitive asset, even though maybe you've lost some money on the income side. So, it could bode well people always say that real estate is a hedge against inflation.
Right.
And so if we enter into an inflationary period, it's probably a great time to buy. But, it's difficult because the inflation is not always helpful when you are in a down market and the tenants have a lot of leverage. So I think we're really in this flux period, but it kind of remains to be seen what's going to happen.
Yeah, these are not.
Carrie, are you seeing? I'm
Oh,
sorry,
no, go
Carrie,
ahead,
are you
Sue, please.
Go ahead.
are you seeing many transactions happen at this point,
Well,
or not yet?
not yet.
yet?
Not for our clients. We are more, doing a lot more on the workout side yet. We haven't bought anything for our clients yet. I know there are a lot of European investors looking to jump into the game, but I think it's hard. Look, there are transactions happening, definitely for sure, but we haven't purchased anything for our clients just yet. But especially not in New York City, where it's I think it's just really competitive and really difficult. But you see things come on the market, and then they transact pretty quickly.
It's interesting in the multifamily side. I think the fourth quarter of 2020 was the best quarter, the most voluminous quarter that there was. And interestingly enough, in spite of all the things, the headwinds that you just described, buyers, the multifamily sector is attracting a lot of capital, and buyers are underwriting right through COVID declines. They are looking at NOIs and saying, okay, there's an impact of COVID that's going away. So they're underwriting right through it. So there continues to be, downward pressure on the cap rates, historically low interest rates,
Right.
which is attracting it. And you're right, escalating costs. So that makes the replacement cost analysis even better. It's a great time to be a seller, frankly, and a very difficult time to be a buyer.
Right. That's what we're seeing. And the lenders out there are saying we're really comfortable with the 2020, 2021 numbers. Like if you're valuing an asset today, and in all likelihood, you're valuing it based on 2020 or 2021 numbers that are very likely to go up. Right. So, I'm agreeing with Sue. Like and then again, like the multifamily side, it's really difficult to buy things with such low cap rates.
Sue, do you think that a prolonged inflationary period is likely given where we are with all of this? Or what are your thoughts on that? I mean, we're starting to see it all the time now, striking the fear of God or whatnot in people. But what do you think about it realistically?
So crystal ball is really murky, but
Mine too.
from the standpoint of costs, the poster child for increasing costs has been lumber, and we're seeing lumber decline in price. And frankly, the lumber seemed very artificial to me because the price of the trees haven't changed in 18 months, but I know a number of the lumber yards shut down and they've reopened. They're running 2 and 3 shifts, and we still don't have Canadian lumber, I don't think, coming in, which is 40%, as I understand it, 40% of our lumber. So anyway, it makes sense to me that that's coming back down, but that's been the poster child for why there might be inflation on the commodity side. Frankly, the commodities, steel, concrete, appliances. I think Jackie Joe talked about supply chain challenges that appeared through COVID. So all of that's impacting. I don't think we have a clue as to what's going to happen to wages, which, all of us are really looking for. We have a lot of open positions. And I think COVID has maybe accelerated retirement for some, or made people rethink about what they want to do with their lives. So I don't think we understand what's going to happen to our wages. All of those would indicate that there may be some inflation. I think you saw the Fed announce that they're going to increase interest rates sooner than they thought otherwise. Mm-hmm. That makes me think there's going to be some inflation, but you're also seeing lumber come back down. So it's hard to say. Again, I think Carrie pointed out, real estate's a pretty good inflation hedge.
Yes.
And on the multifamily side, we are in a little bit better shape because of the short-term nature of our leases. So we have an ability to adjust to inflation sooner, other than hospitality, which prices daily.
Right.
Well, I have a question for the panel more on the retail side, and I'm curious as to whether you're seeing this across the country. We're seeing a ton of new restaurants opening and new concepts coming in. And so, in my, career, I've kind of seen the restaurant industry sort of lead the downturns and lead the coming out. And I've always sort of watched what's happening, and I'm amazed at how many new concepts we have opening everywhere here. And so I'm wondering if you all are seeing that. And apparently chicken places are a huge, huge thing right now. But I'm just curious as to what everybody else is seeing.
And before you answer, because I'd like to piggyback on that, Jackie B, I'm also seeing in New York, for instance, the opening of brand new hotels, even though many of the existing hotels that closed have not reopened. So I think it may go to a similar point. So I'd love to hear what others have to think on these.
I'll be happy to jump in and say that we are seeing that same thing in the Midwest. We're seeing creative retail as well as restaurants opening up. We're also seeing the opportunity. There's quite a lot of what I would call neighborhood retail strips that are becoming available for sale. So potentially the owner wasn't well capitalized, or they had some deferred maintenance and it made more sense for them to sell. So we're seeing a flurry of that kind of activity as well. But agreed on the chicken side, lots of chicken and just, different cultural foods and breweries and tap rooms. Agreed.
Right. In New York City, it's really interesting. One of the things that happened during the pandemic was the opening of the sidewalks. And I think that that's a real interesting wait to see how the political environment deals with it. But we have seen restaurants, these, if you've been to New York, these tiny little restaurants that have doubled or more than doubled their size by taking the side streets and having service on the street, and it's fantastic. And they're talking about keeping it, but then it remains to be seen how the landlords charge for that space, and whether the city allows that to continue. But that's a real change. And yes, Barbara, there are hotels that are opening, and that's a real it's going to be a real competition for the hotels that didn't do well. And of course, you also have this issue with the homeless. And on the Upper West Side, I'm sure you've been seeing this in the paper, where hotels like the Lucerne were housing homeless people and basically turned into homeless shelters. And we're actually dealing with this in San Francisco as well, where hotels were shifted to homeless shelters during the pandemic, pre-pandemic, and now. How do you take that back? How do you turn it around? You have to you have to rebuild it. You have to clean it up. You have to worry about bed bugs and things like that. But it's right. You have to do a gut renovation on those hotels. Then you have to compete, and you also have to rebrand with this sort of scar, if you will, and then compete with all the new hotels that are opening up. So I think it's going to be very competitive and very interesting. But on the retail side, look, there are going to be new uses for all of those retailers that close. You're just going to see that. That's the business cycle, right? That's what happens.
Right.
So I throw this out to all of you. Are there any particular sectors or regions or anything else that you think are ripe for disruption or innovation at this point? Anybody?
I think Jackie Jo might have hit the nail on the head, which is the technology innovation that's happening. It will impact all of our sectors. It's what is needed to really control costs going forward. But I think a lot of the innovation that we are seeing is simply an acceleration of the trends that were already in place.
Yep.
The lesson that I think we learned from COVID was we're much more resilient than we would have anticipated being. never in a million years would we have said, without a test, let's shut down all of our corporate offices and work from home on 3 days notice.
Right.
Right? We never in a million years would have done it.
And we're here, we did it.
Or here we did it. Now,
15 months
granted,
later.
right. Granted, there was probably grace given because of the extreme circumstances that otherwise you might not have put up with. But my takeaway is we need to really rethink how we roll out technology and innovation, and not spend as much time beta testing and regional testing. And, there's a lot of costs associated with that. And frankly, innovation will drive our success in the future. So how you determine, the challenge to me with technology is there are so many good ideas and you can only, an organization can only absorb so much. So how do you pick which one's most important?
Right. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I love that comment, Sue. Right, how many beta tests you need? Nobody, I had never heard of Zoom 20 months ago.
Yeah.
Never heard of it, right? There was no beta test. The beta test was March 14th, right? How do you do a Zoom call? And everybody figured it out. And then they pivoted their technology to make it better. But that was a bit, and it was brilliant. Right, brilliant. I mean, I wish I had been a stockholder, but I'm not. But right, but that was, there were some changes that really came out of it. Most of them were technology, right? How do you do Uber? How do you do DoorDash? How do you order this? Every parent turned to their 16-year-old and said, "How do you order food online? Right? How do you do this? What's the app? What do you need to do?" And we figured it out.
What's an app?
Do you know one of the interesting trends in Florida is, they changed the alcohol laws to allow restaurants to sell like drinks to go.
We did
And,
too. Yeah.
and they're not changing it back. So I think that's something, they didn't see a negative impact from that I think the world feared, or United States and Florida feared. And so we are leaving those changes in the law in place. So
Yeah, we're seeing right now, as Carrie mentioned, what do we do with the sidewalks when this is all over and all of the restaurants sprawled all over them and the increasing bike lanes? But they're also talking about what do we do with this, sale of liquor from restaurants and, like mixed drinks and the like. So interesting. Before we do, sort of our closing remarks, Jackie, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one more comment to that. I would say another trend that we're seeing across the country is this out migration from the metro. And as people are looking at the suburbs and even beyond into the rural areas, I'll kind of echo what Sue had said earlier, is there's an absolute lack of inventory of workforce housing, of affordable senior living, of entry-level single families. So for the major employers in the rural areas, whether you're a janitor or an executive, there is no home to live in at the current time in our experience in the Midwest. So that is something that we're working hard on. And I know it goes well beyond Iowa's borders.
Right. One of the questions in chat goes to that point. What Sarah Marsh of CREWNY New York, well, I would like to know, what do you all think, how do you think the labor shortage will resolve itself and when? Who wants to tackle that?
I think you need an incentive to get people off of unemployment, right? With the current, when that ends and people realize that they can get a job, and it maybe, they're not getting this extra money, but that we need to put an end to that and have people get off and, get off unemployment. And of course, right, the flip side is that it's going to be have an inflationary impact, because employers need to provide for a living wage. And so that's, conundrum, but unemployment is still high enough that you would expect some people to say, here's a job and I need to go back to work.
And this week in Florida, some of our laws are changing to, you have to show that you're looking. So I think that as those laws change, you are going to see, and quite frankly, I think we incentivized people not to work by the way we some of the unemployment benefits got paid because they were making more to be at home than to go in and, work several jobs and still not make as much. So I think that as the laws are changing and those benefits are changing, that you're going to see some more people in the marketplace. And I think you're going to see more technology take the place of, I've seen robots in restaurants delivering food.
Right.
So, you're going to see more technology take the place of those jobs that we can't find people to fill anymore.
Right.
The,
One more comment on that. Oh, go.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sue, and then
Sorry.
yeah.
Sorry, we need a
So-
sensible immigration policy across the country. We don't have one now, and we don't have enough workers to do all the jobs in the United States. So we need to figure out how to get a sensible immigration policy.
Well, and to Jackie B's point, well-intentioned effort, serious unintended consequences. That's always what can trip you up. Carrie, you were going to add before I
Right.
want to get to another
The
question.
other thing that is really, really, really important, and again, I don't want to get into the politics, we also need not only a great immigration policy, we also need a great policy to help people who have young children, so the young children have a place to go that is healthy and safe, right? So with all these children who aren't back to school yet, or parents who can't find childcare for their children while they go to work, it's a problem. It's a real problem, and that's another thing that needs to be solved.
As mothers have learned over the past 15 months with their school-aged children stuck at home for some amount of time. Let's go to another question from Madeline Karch, also through New York. Yay. Is the future of retail in the hands of landlords or in the hands of lenders? How will lenders value these new retail concepts, and will they allow owners to take a chance on a new restaurant? Good question, Madeline. Who wants to start out on that one?
I'm happy to jump in on
Go
that
right
one
ahead.
as well.
Go right ahead.
I would say that I'm finding more and more lenders in the Midwest, mostly that I work with, are open-minded. They want commercial on their on their books, and they're looking for creative concepts. Now they're going through stringent underwriting, and the appraisal of some of these properties is absolutely a challenge. But it's an interesting question. Is it in the hands of the landlords, or it is an interesting question. I think it's a two-sided issue.
Right. Well, I think you have two different kinds of lenders, right? You have loan to own, and then you have the banks that really don't want to take the assets back. And then that becomes an opportunity for, the bank has to take it back. Then they have to adjust it on their books. Then they sell it to an investor, and because of the lower valuation, and the investor bought it at a different price, they can make those deals with other tenants at a lower rent, and then you start that cycle again. And that's really what has to happen when you have properties that aren't performing, and that's part of that cycle. And we'll see that. It also leads to opportunities for investors. But
I have a question for the group, which is related to this. Who is the lender for startup retail? Is it not the landlord in many cases? Who's putting in the TIs and fronting the costs for
and rent relief?
Right, and rent relief. I would say the landlord frequently is the lender for many.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay, so in order to close the conversation out kind of neatly, somewhat neatly, I want each of you all to tell us one thing which gives you cause for optimism in your market or commercial real estate generally, and why. So who wants to start this one off? Jackie Jo.
Okay, it will be me. I would say I'm just excited about the creativity and the ingenuity. Business owners are looking beyond maybe, what they've done before and looked at before in this, post-COVID market. And, people want to be out. I was somewhat recently in Nashville, and there must have been, right as they were taking away the mask mandates, there must have been 10,000 people there on Broadway listening to music and, getting out to art festivals. People want to be out. So I think both that environment of having been pent up, that, there's great things coming.
I agree. I agree. Jackie B, one thing that gives you cause for optimism and why?
So following up on Jackie Jo's comment of pent up, I think there is just a massive, I think we all have this pent up desire to travel again as soon as that's safe. And everybody's starting to do that with driving destinations. I personally flew to the Virgin Islands where I'm from in May, but I think you're going to see just this massive pent up demand bring that market back faster than I think the economists have predicted, because I don't think they realize the human spirit and us wanting to get out and not having done that for so long. So that's what, gives me hope for a quicker recovery in the hospitality sector than I think is predicted.
I hope you're right on that, Jackie B. Of course, somewhat of that depends on whether or not there's enough staff to fly the airplanes, right?
Yeah.
To get the people there. Carrie B.
So, unfortunately,
Carrie T.
Unfortunately, unlike hospitality and retail and restaurants, people are like, hey, I just want to go back and work harder, right? And one of the things that happened in our chat last week is we brought up this, look, I get it. People want more flexibility. Younger people want more flexibility. But if you ask people 5 years ago, would you rather work from home, have nobody know where you were, get the same salary, get the same bonus, and not have to commute? I would guess that a lot of people would say yes. And if you ask them if they wanted more vacation time instead of 4 weeks or 8 weeks, they'd take the 8, right? So people have to come back to the office. I love what Jamie Dimon said. If you can go out to dinner, you can go to the office.
Yeah.
You can go see a ball game. If you can go on vacation and stay in a hotel, you can go to work. And so that is what actually makes me excited about New York and office, that the hotels are going to open, that the restaurants are opening, that my train this morning, people actually were standing on the train. It was crowded.
Wow.
So it was crowded.
This is not the subway, by the way, folks.
Not the subway, Metro North, right? But from Connecticut I've been on that train. You go outside, there were actually people on the streets wearing suits. So you see that, and it makes me hopeful that, and look, there are sheets, sublease spaces coming off the market. People are expecting their employees to come back, and whether it's 3 days or 4 days or 5 days, it will happen. It'll be different, but it'll happen.
Thank you, Carrie. Sue?
So I'm going to give you two answers. Sorry, I can't limit it to one. Specifically for the
Go for it.
regions where we operate with a Texas bent in mind, the acceleration of the jobs that are moving to our markets because it's a less expensive market. I think that trend will continue. We've been the beneficiary of that, and I think we will continue to be the beneficiary, as well as attracting new technology, life science stuff in our markets that will continue to attract new residents to our community. So I think that's important. But more broadly speaking, I think the fact that as a world, we figured out very quickly how to respond to COVID-19 by creating a vaccine in an unbelievably short period of time, and now are getting people vaccinated. We can see the benefits in the United States. Nobody would have anticipated that when this started, and that causes great hope for me that if we focus on a real problem, we can find the solution.
If we work together.
Yeah, hopefully it'll impact the rest of the world, and they'll start to get vaccinated.
So thank you. I agree. So many thanks to Sue, Jackie Jo, Carrie, and Jackie B for an interesting, informative, and forward-looking discussion with a lot to think about. Little shaking of the hand here to thank them. Before we go, though, we have to give a big round of virtual applause to our creative and tireless program planners. Anna Hernandez, SVP and Senior Commercial Loan Officer, Plains Capital Bank, Crew Dallas. Siri Fleiler, a registered interior designer, Shiv Hattery, and Kristen Blackman, Senior Operations Analyst, Principal Real Estate Investors, both from Crew Iowa. and our own digital wizard, Alex Lanaz, Commercial Technology Advisor, Phase Integration, Crew Orlando. Cheers again to our amazing speakers for their wisdom and insights today. Jackie B, Carrie, Jackie J, Joe, and Sue. And a final big thank you to you, our fabulous audience. We hope that you learned something. We hope that it provoked some thinking and some innovation. So have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Barbara.
Big shout out to our moderator, Barbara.
Yes, thank you. Our leader.